let's get started. I hope in the meantime you also appreciate the fact that this presentation looks nicer, which you can thank Sarah for. I wanted to start with just a few slides about stuff that has nothing to do with this. First one is pdfCamp. I think most of you know what pdfCamp is. If you have not been to one, you should. And there is a next one on the calendar for September 29th and 30th in Berlin again. Same location as always. Go to callassoftware.com website and you can subscribe there. Don't wait too, if you want to come, don't wait too long. It's a long way off still, I know, and there is a summer in between and so on. But the meeting we did in Berlin earlier this year was sold out really, really quickly all of a sudden. So if you want to come, don't wait too long. So that's one. And then the second one, which is maybe more interesting, and I don't think that's, well, there may be people here who don't know about this yet, so I wanted to make a slide about it as well. Oh, I can't see what is in the chat. Okay, cool. Thank you, Sarah. There may be people who don't know about this, and I do want to use it if we need it a little bit. And that is that one of the things that came out pdfCamp is that it would be nice to have some form of a user forum. And actually, that was brought up at both of the events, both in London and in Berlin. It is something that we had as an idea. Callas used to have a forum a long time ago that wasn't very active, but the number of users has increased, and hopefully the number of level of interaction and so on has increased as well. So we're kind of hoping that we have enough critical mass now to make this happen again. So there is actually a user forum, and we're inviting people to that piecemeal, so one after the other, not everyone in the same group. But for those of you who join these classes, there is a user forum, and you can join it. And you can go to forum.callassoftware.com. The QR code should hopefully say the same thing. Or callas.discourse.group, that should also work. It's set up. We've started to put some content on there, especially, for example, in the news from Callas section, and there have already been a few people that couldn't resist putting feature requests there, which is really, really good. That's part of what it's made for. You can subscribe, you can share it. For those of you who are resellers, you can share it with your customers if you want to from now on. It is public, so you can share it. For those of you who work for companies, you can share it with your colleagues. For those of you, am I missing anyone? For those of you who are OEM partners, you can share it with both people inside your company and your customers. So you can share it with anyone. That's the summary. I mentioned the forum because there is a category in here for place content. It's on the screenshot here, the purple one by coincidence. Place content, and I already made a topic in there for this first session. It has the link to the Zoom meeting. That's not very helpful for you because you're already here. But it had the link for the Zoom meeting. I will do the same for the upcoming sessions. But also this gives you a place to ask questions afterwards if you want to. So if something comes up, if you think about something after this video and that you want to ask, or you have a problem preparing for the next session, or I've given you homework and you can't complete it, then you can talk to me there and share things there. So forum.callassoftware.com, don't hesitate to join that. And then cChip. I wanted, as I said, I wanted to put to lay the foundation, and and then we start working with this. And so the first question is this fish and chips thing that I called these. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from the fact that cChip is an abbreviation that is really used, and the technology comes from a question that Callas had at some point, and that was users saying, we want pre-flight reports, but, and I don't think they said it this way, but that's what they meant anyway. We want pre-flight reports in PDF, but we would like the pre-flight reports to be nice, and the old pre-flight report is perhaps not nice, and we want it to be adjustable, because I don't want a Callas logo there. I want my own logo there. Or I don't want this Callas red color, but I would like to add my own branding in there. And then the question was, from a product management point of view, if you get these kinds of requests, the question is, how do we implement that? And of course, one way to implement it, which would have been easier from an implementation point of view, one way to implement it would have been, we'll give you some kind of template language, or just a template maybe. And then you can edit that template and we'll give you some options. And maybe the template allows you to specify the colors. Maybe there is some UI that allows you to specify the colors and edit one of these templates and so on. But that has a problem. It's easy to implement, but it also has a problem. And the problem is that, and you should all recognize that, if I give you the possibility to modify the logo, then the next question you're going to ask is, yes, but this logo is so big, can I make it a little bit smaller? And if we give you the capability of changing the color of the titles in this report, and the question is going to be, yeah, but I want to use a different font, or I want to make the title a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. I want to fit more text or less text, and it shouldn't be A4, it should be letter format. And it's a never-ending story. It's a kind of worms. Once you open it, there is no way of fulfilling the requests that everyone has. And so rather than doing something very simple and making the problem of, can we make a nice adjustable pre-flight report, making that problem go away for a couple months, Callas said, no, we're going to come up with something that works better than that. And that was, in the end, cChip. And I think I've got this right. I've asked people, but if I'm wrong, then someone from Callas can correct me.
Convert HTML into PDF, completely correct.
HTML in PDF, yes. And so the idea was, it's an abbreviation for this technology. And so rather than making some kind of template language, which Callas has some experience with, you have the old imposition language, for example, which is some kind of a scripting language that can do some things. So they could have done something like that. I'm saying they because this is in the past and I wasn't with Callas, so it's confusing. I'm making myself schizophrenic here. But so rather than doing that, the idea was, why don't we just use HTML? And so the template is HTML. You can do whatever modifications you want. And then we will make something that converts that HTML into a PDF document, and that will become your PDF pre-flight report. That sounds really good. It's very, very flexible. It was maybe not the easiest to implement, but at least it's very, very flexible. So why did you do that? Well, HTML was even then, because this goes back quite a few years. I hesitate to put a year on it. Maybe you know, Mark, but I would say at least 10 years ago. So HTML is a known animal, if you want. It's something that quite a few people know. They understand how it's well understood how HTML and CSS works. Well, no one likes CSS, but still we understand the principle. It has support for JavaScript embedded in it. There are many, 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 many websites that use a combination of these three things. And so this is easy because it means if you want to change the color of something or the font of something or whatever, you can just go on the internet and read some HTML on how to modify HTML. So it's also nicely recursive in that sense. So it's easy, it's well known, it's well understood. There is a lot of documentation for it. There are courses about it and so on. So that's one. The second thing is it is a little bit complex, obviously. I mean, figuring out how HTML and CSS and JavaScript work, especially the combination of these three things, is annoyingly difficult. And I know because I am an old style software developer, or at least I was at one point. And so I understood C, C++, and C to some extent. But teaching myself how to make a proper website with these things was annoying. I still remember it. It was really annoying. But it can do a lot. It is very powerful. Testimonies, all of all of these websites that we know and use, a lot of that stuff is just done with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So it gives you almost complete freedom. Maybe not complete freedom, but almost complete freedom. And then the other thing, although I am not entirely certain that this was the idea from the very start, but certainly now this has grown to something that is multi-purpose and it's used for much more than just these pre-flight reports. So it's not that this was an effort that was implemented and is then only used for these custom pre-flight reports. It's used for so much more. And I think I've listed more or less all the uses. Again, if someone knows something I've forgotten, then feel free to tell me. But so custom PDF preflight reports were the first case where this technology was used. But then in the meantime, you also have, I think the second thing was actually callas pdfChip. They're not in chronological order. And pdfChip, if you don't know it, is a standalone application that does conversion from command line based conversion from HTML to PDF. So that was kind of the second implementation. And that is very similar to what happened with these pre-flight reports, right? I mean, making a pre-flight report is creating a document from nothing, some information about what happened during pre-flight, but then you create a PDF that wasn't there before. And pdfChip, in essence, does the same. And I'll come back to that. And then after that came, I think, the PDF comparison report. I'm not really sure when that was converted to this type of technology, but it also uses it. But then after that came place content. And so the idea there was slightly different. It was, okay, so now we have the capability of converting HTML to PDF. So could we not use this to decorate PDF files? That's the term I usually choose for this is I have an existing PDF document, and rather than creating a new PDF, I want to just add information to the existing PDF. And add information could be anything. It could be clip marks, something as simple as trim marks or bleed marks or whatever. It could be a color bar. It could be little lines where I want to fold a letter. It could be whatever you want it to be. And so place content uses this cChip technology internally. At least some of the place content fixups do, not all of them. But it uses this conversion technology internally, which also makes it very, very, very powerful. And you can do things like proof pages, and what I talked about in the south of France earlier this week, what they call BAT or proof page in English, where you have a preview of the file and then a whole bunch of metadata around it, either to use in prepress or to use at the printer or in the rest of the workflow, or to send back to the customer for approval. So you can use that same HTML to PDF technology to enhance the documents that you already have. And then the latest addition, if you want, although it's more or less a reuse of what was already there, is imposition decorations. So in pdfToolbox 16, in the imposition configuration, I now have the possibility to add also place content elements. So I can have an imposition configuration that adds a background rectangle or a barcode or formatted text or different types of lines and so on. And that also uses this place content technology, and so it also uses cChip. So it's become, it was quite of an investment from a development point of view to make this happen and make it robust and fast enough and so on. But it is something that is used in multiple places throughout the products that Callas has today. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about the fact that there is pdfChip and there is pdfToolbox. And I had a bit of a discussion with myself. Those are always the most difficult ones. A bit of a discussion with myself, what I want to use for the upcoming sessions in terms of technology to make this as simple as possible for everyone. And I think I've decided that it's going to be pdfToolbox, but so I want to spend a little bit of time on, okay, so what is pdfChip versus pdfToolbox? What's the difference? I'm saying this is both a cChip technology, or it both has cChip technology. Are there any differences between the two that we should know of? And turns out that there is. So this is essentially what pdfChip does. So I have an input file, and then I have output files, and the output files are PDF. The input file for pdfChip can be different things. And the slide is perhaps slightly misleading in the sense that the input typically is an HTML or an SVG, something like that, but very often coupled with additional data. And the example that you see here is more or less a variable data example, where I would take a template that represents a single ticket, in this like a cinema ticket, a film ticket if you want. And so the HTML template would be the graphical visualization of this film ticket. And then with pdfChip, I would take information such as what you have in a simple CSV file in this case here. Well, it's not even a CSV file, it's just a text file with different lines, and each line has a code. And what you see on the right-hand side is that one of these codes appears on that film ticket. And of course, the output from pdfChip in this case would be a PDF file, probably with a long list of pages, and each page would have a different text on there. And you can easily imagine that it's not text that is added, but it's perhaps an EAN code or a QR code that is printed on each individual ticket. This is a very, very common use case for pdfChip. It doesn't have to be this. It could just be I have an HTML file or I have an SVG file and I want a static one and I want to convert that into PDF. That would work great, no problem. But what you see that is that in many implementations where pdfChip is used, it's not just a static template that is used. It is a static template plus additional information. And pdfChip makes it easy to do so because it has a special command line parameter to import a JSON file that just becomes part of the JavaScript variables. But I can just as easily make a template that would read an XML file or a CSV file or a text file or anything like that. And then the output would be one PDF, multiple PDFs, depending on what you want. Right? This is different than pdfToolbox. I wanted to list what you can do with pdfChip and what you maybe cannot do with pdfToolbox, but in the end, it's the same. And there are workarounds for most of these things, maybe not all of them. Yeah. So if you look at pdfChip as an application, and if you haven't played with it, I would encourage you to at least play with it. It's fun. Well, I think it's fun. If you look at what pdfChip does, then one of the things it can do is output multiple pages in a very flexible way. That's the first thing. What do I mean with that? Well, my template, as in this example, my template may normally just be one page. But because I have JavaScript support and because I can modify the HTML on the fly and stuff like that, I can quite easily have a template that represents a single movie ticket, but outputs 10,000 movie tickets on the other end, each with a custom QR code or text or whatever code on output. If you think about place content and cChip technology when it comes to pdfToolbox, so the way that it's integrated in pdfToolbox, that is not so simple. Place content cannot create different pages on the fly. pdfToolbox can, but the place content engine cannot. The place content engine in pdfToolbox is a decoration engine. So it takes the PDF that exists and it adds elements to it. So if I wanted to mimic this use case that I described with pdfToolbox, then I would have to make a process plan that first gives me the number of pages that I want, for example, by duplicating pages, and then add the content on top of it. So there is a workaround, but pdfChip in this scenario has, well, it's a little bit easier because there is no PDF when you start, you're just creating it on the fly. Same, and that's exactly what I just said, creating a PDF document from scratch. That is something that pdfChip is very good at. pdfToolbox isn't. pdfToolbox with place content needs a PDF to start from. Is there a workaround for that? Yes. So let's take another use case. If I want to generate, let's say that I want to generate a kind of an overview of an order. An order comes in from a web to print system, and then I want to print out a digital delivery note, whatever you want to call it, with some information about that order. With pdfChip, I can do that quite easily. I make a template, and the data that comes from the web to print system is the input, and I output a PDF file with an overview. With pdfToolbox, if I want to use pdfToolbox for it, I will need something to start from. And so I could make a blank A4 page and then add content to it with place content in pdfToolbox, but I need something to start from. So again, pdfChip has an advantage for these types of scenarios. Very similarly, if I want to modify the page sizes in my output, then pdfToolbox has a disadvantage. Place content is a decorator, as I said, and it just takes what already exists and then modifies it or adds to it. It cannot modify the page size of a document. If I want to do that, then I will need to have other fix-ups in pdfToolbox that modify the page size or the imposition engine or something that does that for me. In pdfChip, I can just output whatever page size I want. If you want to see an example of that, look in pdfToolbox and use the tiling functionality. The tiling functionality generates different pieces, slices, tiles out of a large PDF document, and it creates optionally an overview page as the first page, which is also always an A4. The tiling functionality in pdfToolbox uses pdfChip in the background, right? And the main reason that it used that is because it is much easier to do it that way, because we can then, in a much simpler way, modify the page sizes and so on. Could you do it also with the imposition engine? Yes, by now I think you could. But pdfChip definitely has an easier implementation path here. pdfChip, as I already said, also has built-in capabilities of dealing with incoming JSON files. So if my web-to-print system gives me a JSON file, pdfChip makes it very simple to import that and do things with it in my template. If I want to do this with pdfToolbox, yes, there are ways to do it, but it may be slightly more difficult to implement again. And require more JavaScript, probably. And then the other one is that if I want multiple output documents, and I'll go back to this example, I can generate a single PDF file with 10,000 movie tickets, but I could just as easily generate 10,000 individual PDF files with pdfChip. It's up to me. I can decide in the template, I can decide what the output is going to be, how many pages per file, and what the naming is of these output files, and so on. With pdfToolbox, that is not as easy. Again, it's a decorator. So whatever comes in goes out. And the output is typically a single PDF document. Can I work around that? Well, yes, in a way. I can have a process plan that first does whatever I want to do and then splits the document into chunks. That works just fine. But it is an additional step that I want to add, or I need to add on top of the place content technology again. So for all of these things, pdfChip has an advantage, but you can kind of work around it in pdfToolbox and get things done as well. The last one, I think, is the one that is the most difficult to really resolve in pdfToolbox if you run into the issue, and it is performance. Because all of the things I mentioned in terms of these other 5 points are workarounds, they take time. They may take time. And so getting performance that is more or less linear is going to be more difficult. In pdfChip, and I've done some testing on that for projects I was involved in the past, it is reasonably easy to get to linear performance, meaning if I generate 100 movie tickets, it takes X. If I generate 1,000 movie tickets, it takes 10 times X. And if it's 1,000,000, it's longer. It's 1,000 times longer than the 1,000 or something. Yeah. So performance is kind of linear in terms of the number of output pages. And because of all of these other operations, performance is probably going to be better on the pdfChip side than it is going to be on the pdfToolbox side. Now, if you have a reasonable amount of pages, that's probably not the end of the world. If it's automated, who cares whether it takes 5 seconds or 20 seconds? But it is something to keep in mind. And in environments where you want either very fast processing or you want to process very, very large documents, pdfChip may offer a real advantage in terms of performance. There's also a price difference between the two. Let's be very open and honest about that. And pdfChip is much more expensive. That's something that we have internal discussions about as well. And if someone has strong opinions, then please write them to me. I would be interested in hearing about it. But there is a commercial difference between the two products as well. Okay, so how does this work? And I don't want to go into all of the details. Again, this is kind of an introductory session, but I do want to start talking about it because we're going to look at the technology in the next session. So HTML to PDF. Whenever I say that to people, I can start. I can see people being nervous about that concept, and for a good reason, I think. We all associate HTML with the web, and you associate the web with things that are not very high quality, unfortunately, in most cases, that are probably RGB, which is not what you want when you print, or at least not for everything, and there are a bunch of other limitations that you think of when you think of HTML. So why would you use HTML in a print production environment, and how would you use it? How does that work? Well, to begin with, it is regular HTML. And when in the next session, I want to talk about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and give you basic overview of these things, that is easy because it really is regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It is not different than what you would encounter on any website. However, there are some important things that have changed. And so the first thing is the conversion engine from HTML to PDF is WebKit based. And somewhere in the documentation, you can figure out what the WebKit version is. There is a page, a compatibility page, that tells you what version of WebKit is used here. And that may be relevant because the version of WebKit tells you what are the HTML and CSS and JavaScript constructs that are supported. HTML and CSS and JavaScript are standards and they evolve. And so it is important to know which of these things can be used. And in the history of pdfToolbox and pdfChip, that has also changed. And so there are things that you can use now that you could not use 5 years ago. But it is a standard WebKit engine. And so this is an engine that normally would take HTML and these other things, and it would spit out pixels, right? And that's what you see on your screen. That's what this thing was built for. There are two big changes that callas implemented for this. The first one is there are a lot of additions to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that are supported by this cChip engine. So there are things that I can do in HTML or that I can do in CSS that would not work in a web browser, but do work in this environment. And I want to talk about this in more detail in the next session. But to give you examples, for HTML, the best example is color, always. Where in HTML, I don't really have a way to specify spot colors, for example. So I can't specify a die line because that concept doesn't exist, right? And that becomes clear when you look at some tools on the web. If you look at Canva, for example, Canva doesn't support spot color. Why? Well, because the concept doesn't really exist in this environment, and so it's hard to do it that way. They have some stuff that kind of is used to fake it around it, but spot color is not supported. However, cChip can perfectly well output PDF documents that contain spot colors. So how does this work? Well, there is, in addition to CSS, a new tag that a web browser doesn't understand, but that cChip does understand, and that is converted into a spot color construct in the output, in the PDF that is output. HTML doesn't support the generation of barcodes, but I can have an object tag in HTML that is converted to a barcode, high quality barcode on the fly by the cChip engine. So something that is not supported in a browser, but is supported in the cChip engine. And then, of course, on the JavaScript side, there are things that are supported by cChip technology as well, like an entry function that is called automatically and that allows you to modify the HTML DOM. If you don't know what that is, it's fine. I'll talk about it next session. But things like an an entry function that is called and that allows you to modify the DOM, that is something that is offered by the cChip engine and wouldn't work in or at least not in that way in a website. So there are additions to these three languages that are only understood by the WebKit engine inside of pdfToolbox or pdfChip. The other thing is optimizations. I already said the whole idea behind HTML in a browser is that this HTML is converted ultimately into pixels. That's not the case for cChip. Instead it creates optimized PDF output, right? And so I have an HTML template that is output into PDF. Good question about that. Is that the same as whatever it's called, WCA-HTML to PDF? No, it's not. There are a number of different technologies out there that are similar to what pdfChip does or what cChip does. There is something. Is it XSLFO, XSL formatting objects or something? And then there are a number of engines that take HTML and convert to PDF. I think the difference between these different technologies very often, especially the lower end ones, is that the output is not as optimized and not as geared toward print production as what you get from the cChip engine. The cChip engine is really optimized to generate full print production ready files. And I can even generate PDFX4 compliant files that have ICC profiles in them and have spot colors and CMYK and no RGB. And so I can get optimized print production files. That's often a problem for some of these other engines. And so that's my third point. I'm getting production ready PDF out of this. Not just production ready in the sense that it contains CMYK instead of RGB, but also production ready in the sense that it optimizes a number of things that otherwise would not work well in this kind of engine. For WebKit, the fact that you have multiple objects on top of each other, or the fact that, for example, as a background, you always generate white rectangles and then paint on top of that is not a big deal. But if you generate print production output, that's typically not what you want. So the PDF that is generated is also highly optimized in cChip. Okay, enough of that. So how do you go if, as I said, I'm going to do this step by step, and I'm going to try at least to show you all of these different technologies, and we'll do this together. If in the meantime you want to look at stuff already, or as we're going through this, you're looking for information, then there are two places where you can find information. Anything that has to do with what is supported in terms of HTML, CSS, specific JavaScript, and so on, the best source of information is likely the callas pdfChip documentation. So you go to help.callassoftware.com. One of the manuals there is for callas pdfChip, and that is where you find a lot of this stuff. How do I put CMYK colors or spot color in my HTML template? Well, go to the callas pdfChip documentation. There is a chapter in there that talks about pdfChip specific CSS. That will tell you how to do it. And what you find there in terms of, at least in terms of HTML and CSS, will typically also work in pdfToolbox. There is also a chapter about place content in the pdfToolbox manual. I looked at it again. I think I wrote some of the articles, even though I didn't recognize them, but they have penguins in the example, so I'm assuming that I wrote them. But a lot of that stuff is a little bit older, and what I think is missing is a chapter that starts with this introduction that I'm giving, and that then goes one step by step through how do you deal with that. It is on my list of things that would be good if we could rewrite this and reorganize the chapter a little bit. But so that chapter exists. But typically, if you're looking for how do I accomplish this in HTML or CSS, look at the callas pdfChip documentation, and that will probably tell you much faster and much easier. And it's also better organized. If it's about JavaScript, be a little bit careful, because some of the JavaScript information that you will find in the pdfChip chapter is likely not going to work for pdfToolbox, because there is a bunch of stuff there that assumes that you're going to use this within pdfChip, which is a command line tool that has special needs and so on. And so some of that documentation may be specific to pdfChip and not work in pdfToolbox. You have to be a little bit careful on that side. And that goes to some extent for the other things that I mentioned as well. If you look in the pdfChip documentation, you'll see that there is some stuff about page sizes. As I already said, place content in pdfToolbox is not capable of modifying the page size of the output document. You can still modify the page size of your template, and that has all kinds of consequences. But the consequence may not be the same as what would happen on the pdfChip side. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. Also, when you talk about documentation, something that is worth keeping in mind is that, remember that slide where I said it's used for custom PDF Preflight reports and place content and then idiom position engine and then pdfChip. And each of these implementations has been done historically separated by a couple of years. And so some things that work for Preflight report templates may be implemented slightly different in the place content engine. And so especially the way that the cChip technology is integrated with pdfToolbox or with pdfChip, there are definitely differences there. And hopefully we have enough time to talk about all of these things. But yeah, you'll see that some of these things are more modern than others. The Preflight technology integration is, or the report integration is slightly older than what happened in place content, for example. And so you see differences there in implementation. On this documentation side, question that I see popping up, and you can also, if I don't answer a question, it's because I didn't see it. I mean, I'm trying to multitask, but I'm really not all that good at it usually. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up as well. But a question about the documentation, is this available in some other formats? You can actually download it as a PDF file. I never do it, and I find what is generated slightly annoying. But I think there is still a way to go into the callas pdfChip manual and then download a PDF document, for example. And specifically for pdfChip, there is also some kind of tutorial with steps and things that have examples and so on. You can also find that in the pdfChip manual. It is linked from there somewhere. So there is documentation. Please refer to it if there are things that are completely not clear or where you say, oh, this is really explained in a very horrible way. Feel free to say so. I have probably written it, so you're not going to offend me. Or at least if you offend someone, it's me and not someone else. And I would rather hear it so that we can improve it. So how are we going to do this? Well, like I said, I thought about this for a long time. It has some advantages to use pdfChip, but then probably not every one of you has pdfChip or has a license, and I can give you licenses, but then you have to figure out how pdfChip works. And I would think that in many cases, the people who said they were interested in this are mostly interested from the pdfToolbox side. So I think I've decided that we're going to use pdfToolbox, either desktop or CLI or a combination, whatever you want to use. If you don't have a license for pdfToolbox desktop, then yes, as the slide says, why don't you have a license? You should have a license. If you don't, talk to me, and we can definitely give you temporary licenses to play with this. By the way, if you do have a license for pdfToolbox CLI, pdfToolbox desktop running on the same machine will also work. You can, of course, also use a trial license, but that will only work for 15 days. So if you would want to follow along, or if there is someone within your company who wants to follow along and they don't have a license, just reach out to me and ask, and I'm sure we'll find a way to fix it. I feel obligated to say that you can also just buy a license for pdfToolbox Desktop. It's a really cool tool. So then you also have a license. Okay, and that is more or less what I wanted to cover today. My plan for the next session, and that is, I believe, next week, until further notice, my plan for the next session is I want to cover, because I know that we have people here who have not actually used some of these technologies that we're talking about. And for those of us who have, it's easy, but as I said, I really understand it's not easy for everyone. I want to talk about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from a conceptual point of view, so that we're kind of all on the, that we have a common understanding, that we have a common base to then look at how do we use this in cChip. And even for the ones who have used it, the last part of that I think could still be interesting. And that is the differences between the HTML approach in web development, what you may have experience with, and how you would use it in pdfToolbox and pdfChip. I said that everything that works on a website in terms of HTML, CSS, JavaScript would also work in pdfToolbox. And while that is true, it doesn't mean that it is smart to use it. Yeah? And in fact, to my enjoyment, I think in many cases, the things that they tell you to do in web development are the things that you probably should not do for pdfChip and pdfToolbox, or at least you should be aware of what the danger is. And my oldest daughter does studies something with web development, so I hear from her what they teach, and so more and more what is taught is, oh, you shouldn't do absolute positioning, and everything should be responsive, and it should work on multiple screens and whatever. And that's absolutely correct. And usually for pdfToolbox and pdfChip, it doesn't matter at all, because you know that you want to generate an A4 with certain content on it. And so you don't want to be responsive. You want to position certain elements in a certain location, because that's what you know that you want to do. But then at the same time, the fact that you have an HTML layout engine that can do things for you dynamically within that absolute framework is also very useful. So it much more often becomes this hybrid approach of, maybe I want to do some things with absolute positioning, and then for other content or for parts of the content, I want to generate um, these things dynamically. Yeah, and so we'll talk a little bit about how does that work. There are differences for page sizes, there are differences for positioning, there are differences regarding colors and transparency, and what should I be careful for if I don't want to end up with a bunch of RGB in my generated PDF. There are differences with fonts. That is typically very, very complex in a website environment, because you have all these different font technologies. But in pdfChip, again, you know what template you're making, so it's much easier. So I want to at least spend some time talking about what are the things that you will probably read about on the internet if you want to learn more about HTML and CSS, that you should forget when you deal with pdfChip and pdfToolbox. I think that is an important topic. And then the next lesson or next class that I want to do, and I don't have it on the slide here. Maybe I change my mind after this one. We'll see how far we get. But the next one I want to talk about. Okay, let's dive into templates for place content and how does that work? What are the components, and how can you get going with that? Maybe one last point to stop today. I didn't put it on the slide, but at some point we're going to look at templates and at HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. That shouldn't be a surprise to most of you here, but just so you know, if we need to start looking at these things, then I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. So if you want to follow along once we get to that point, and you want to make it easy for yourself to follow along, then that's what I'm going to be using. And it may actually also, if you're using Visual Studio Code, it may be interesting to make sure that I don't know if they still have a free thing, but I'm using Copilot in Visual Studio Code. If there are free accounts of Copilot inside of there, then maybe make sure that that works as well. Because this is not an AI class, and I don't want to focus too much on that, but it could make life easier for you because you can certainly ask Copilot, now give me kind of a standard framework for an HTML file, and it will do that really, really nicely for you. Same with CSS and so on. It can actually help a lot if you don't feel very comfortable with these things, and that will save you from having to look up everything on the internet and just ask Copilot to do something basic for you. So I don't know if there are any remaining questions for today. If so, please unmute yourself and just speak up. If not, then make sure that you join the forum. I will just let me see if I can go back because I can go forward but not back, I think, with this stupid setup. So let me just put that on screen again. If you have not joined this, then please join the forum. Say hi there if you want in the fish and chips session or whatever. I will make a topic for the next session as well, and I will put the Zoom link in there. The links are different because they're different Zoom meetings. So each class has a different link.